Welcome to the Football Retro Podcast.
The word welcome, I guess, is stretching it a little when you're an Australian in a place like this today.
Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Football Retro Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny, and today we're back to full table, full screen. Got Fatty, Yak, and Darcy. How you doing, guys? How you doing, Fatty?
Full screen. It's been a while, eh? Feels like it's been about a month since we were all together. Obviously had a couple of weeks off, and then there were episodes where everyone was away for various reasons, but finally back to get a balanced view, because we're very unbalanced on Akram's side, so we're good to have a Darcy to sort of level it out.
We need a Darcy back. How you doing, Ak?
Yeah, doing all right. I mean, I'm a little surprised you say that, because if anyone's going to agree with me on this table, it's probably going to be a Darcy. It's certainly not going to be you. So
I don't recall the last time he actually agreed with you, but anyway.
It's like parents fighting for the kids' love. Darcy, how you doing, man?
Good. Yeah, good to be back. Must admit, I got a bit of a laugh out of last week's episode with you guys mentioning Benzema and his guilty verdict and that.
His rape verdict.
Rape. It has nothing to do with rape.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, here we go. Here comes the
This
defense.
is the reaction we wanted.
Here comes the defense attorney.
To us.
It wasn't with rape, but
It was blackmail, wasn't it?
Apparently he raped some underage girl or something.
no, it was to do with some tape with his teammate, like involved Matthew Valbuena, and he got some. He was an intermediary trying to work with these guys to get it extorted or whatever, and he thought he was doing the right thing, and he got caught out. And that's what happens when he.
So he made revenge porn. Is that what he's saying?
Look, I don't know how the laws are in France, but that's what happened.
Now it's about misinterpretation of the law.
This is.
Come on.
Wasn't it involved with prostitutes as well?
Oh, that was like over 10 years ago. Him and Ribery, like with some girl, and they thought she was overage and she was underage, and I don't know what it was. And, yeah,
that's why I remember that underage thing.
Yeah, that was long ago. But
Well, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. What the fuck?
After 10 years, after 10 years, it's void.
But then anyway, that's what he gets for hanging out with the wrong crowd. So yeah,
Now he blames everyone else.
he did.
So far, it's been the French laws that are at fault. The other people, he was trying to help his teammate. Somehow he was found guilty in a court.
I'm saying from his perspective. From his perspective, he thought he was doing the right thing, but he was naive, and he paid.
naive is the word for it, is it?
Naive. That's a good defense. I think after all that, it justifies Didier Deschamps putting him into exile from the national team. Makes sense, bro.
It was more like the French Federation that did that, but anyway.
You and here, Darcy, last week. So a quick 5 seconds. Did Messi deserve the Ballon d'Or, yes or no?
Based on what he won with the major tournament and the stats, you can't go past the stats. I can see why they gave it to him.
Okay, perfect. Nice and simple. Because I got a few abusive messages over the week.
Really? Read them out to us.
Lewandowski had a bit of a sook yesterday as well. I don't know if you heard.
No.
When they asked him about Messi's speech at the Ballon d'Or, saying that he deserved one, that Robert deserved one, what was his thoughts? And Lewandowski said something along the lines of, I wish it was a genuine speech and not empty words.
What does he expect that Messi's going to say? Oh, here's take my trophy.
I don't know. People. I'm sure people got in his head.
That would even be worse because it would be so belittling. Like, imagine how belittling it would be for Messi to say, "No, here, please, you have it."
Well, same as Cristiano commented on a post. I don't know if you guys saw.
Yeah, I saw.
Factos about someone was smashing Messi and complimenting him, so his ego must be a little bit bruised as well. So, what can we do? Let us hooks out there. Let's get into the topic tonight, which is obviously the World Cup is coming in about 12 months. So 12 months exactly, I think we'll be in the middle of a World Cup, which is a bit of a weird timing.
What a random, absolute random time. We spoke about this at the very beginning when it first came out, and there were discussions about it being played in the winter and all that sort of bullshit. And then we were like, how fucking bullshit is that? That's crazy. How can you just change the schedule? How's it going to affect, the football calendar? And I personally thought, surely it's not going to happen. There's no way they're going to change the calendar. But seems clearly money talks.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see with the calendar change for next year how clubs are going to cope, given that they're going to start the season in August and then they're going to have a break in November, and then I think they'll have a tournament in November, December time, and then come back again. So it's just going to be this is unprecedented. So it'll be interesting to see how it's all going to be planned
So
out.
does the tournament, like a Premier League or Serie A La Liga, for example, does it start earlier, have a break for about a month or two, and then come back and resume? Is that what happens?
I think they're going to start maybe a week or two early. I'm not sure, but then I think in Spain they usually have a week or two break at the end of the year, but they're going to play during that time. I think so.
Okay.
To
They have a winter break, which the Premier League doesn't have the winter break because the
Yeah.
Premier League will have an abundance of fixtures which go through Christmas Eve and then Boxing Day fixtures, which is always a big round in the Premier League because there's a lot of back-to-back games, and then New Year's Eve games and New Year's Day games and all that sort of stuff. It's always very, very congested fixture list for the Premier League around that time. But it'll be interesting now with this what's going to happen.
Everything's out of whack.
any other year, the qualifiers would have been done by now, and the draw would have been done in December. But
Yeah.
now, qualifiers are going to resume in March or January, I think, in South America in some parts,
Mm-hmm.
and then February, April, March, and then June they have the playoffs, and then the draw will happen, I think, in April as well. So there'll still be some teams that haven't qualified yet, and they're going to still do the draw.
Yeah, look, the thing is like for me, I don't mind the change in the schedule. Like it is different for all of us. It's very novel. But it is good to see FIFA trying to play the World Cup in different parts of the world and try to compensate by changing the schedule. I don't mind that at face value, but as we all know, there are a lot of concerns surrounding the World Cup, regardless of just the schedule. And there's been a tremendous amount of accusations of human rights violations and for the workers and even the health and well-being of the players. To play in certain conditions like that. That's my concern. The change of the schedule, it's going to be inconvenient for a lot of clubs and for some players. It's going to be really different for us as fans. But I would be on board on that if the actual project seemed on the up and up, and my concern is that it's not.
It's an estimation that approximately 4,000 people die in the building of the stadiums and under slave-like conditions for this World Cup.
Yeah, but you know what? That's not. It's funny that people are surprised by this, considering the location of the World Cup. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries to this day still have
that kind of conditions for their workforce. Yeah,
what could be described in the Western world as almost slave labor,
Mm.
And it's still widely accepted there. They'll get people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who want to come for work but don't have work in their countries. From Southeast Asia,
yeah,
from India, from Pakistan, from a lot of the poorer African countries. A lot of people will travel to the Gulf countries for work opportunities because there's a lot of work there and there's a lot of money for them to, and they generally go there as single people. They'll leave their families behind and they'll go work so they can send money back. And they get taken advantage of, unfortunately. That's the case, not just in this circumstance, but in general. So it's funny that it's just being highlighted now, obviously because, the world stage and people are looking at, the World Cup, and obviously it's an anomaly that it's out of whack in terms of time frame and all that, so there's a bit more attention on it. But this is not a brand new thing. I'm surprised that it's taken people this long to even realise that.
Let me ask you this: FIFA being the host and the organizer of the tournament, do they have some responsibility to oversee these things and make sure these other things don't happen?
Yeah, absolutely they have. And I don't think it's impossible for them to implement some sort of guidelines to say that this should be the norm. It's not going to be something like where the Qataris are going to say, this is way out of budget. We know that's not a factor, right? That they could manage to do it in a way where, the people are paid fairly, the conditions are okay, that these people, blah, 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 get all the conveniences that they need to work on such a project. They could have really done this in a way where they could have been a world leader in how things like that should be done. They could have showcased to the world how you can do it, how we can still make a successful tournament, even though the time frame is out of whack, by just being different with how they did everything. but they chose to, just to line their pockets. Like at the end of the day.
But that's sorry, Darcy. Go ahead, mate.
I know you go. You go.
Well, I was going to say, but that's the issue from the beginning of it all, isn't it? Is that money was the main thing that dictated FIFA's decision in granting Qatar the World Cup in the first place, and I think that was the decision that was the first one that was made that was founded more on economic rather than moral reasons. It wouldn't be difficult to assess countries' applications for the World Cup and have, as part of that application, as part of that consideration, human rights record and how they treat their citizens. It's like Fatty said, it's not surprising that this is happening. This has happened in all aspects of the workforce in certain countries like that, not just for this World Cup. So it wasn't a stretch. It's not exactly like this would take FIFA or any people from FIFA by surprise. They knew what they were signing up for. They didn't care.
But now, if four individuals here from Sydney, Australia, know the working conditions are bad over there, why don't FIFA step in? Why haven't they stepped in? What do you think they've allowed this to happen and continue to happen and have not done anything, at least publicly, about it? Because a lot of companies and organizations we know throw some PR bullshit just to keep people happy and say, we've tried this, we've done this. It sounds like they just turn a blind eye or haven't done anything to address it. What do you guys think that is?
I don't think there's actually a reason, because as Akram said, it's not only this. Like if you go back to Rio 2014, same thing.
Similar.
There's a lot of issues there, a lot of problems. Like Brazil obviously is not a wealthy country like Qatar in that sense. So they were pushed, and there were things where people were saying, "The fuck, they're not even going to make it in time. Stadiums weren't going to be ready and whatnot." Yeah. So they obviously had to push a lot of the workforce and a lot of the workers to try and get things done in time, because then it becomes a problem. And then there's obviously a domino effect. If they can't host a tournament properly, FIFA's they're not going to grant them ever another international tournament and things like that. But
yeah, and I also think, Johnny, one of some of the biggest reasons why you're not seeing much come out from FIFA regarding this kind of thing is, number one, it's the influx of money, which is their primary motivator, and there are vast sums of it involved. But it's also the fact that the representatives, the people that work for FIFA, the president, etc., all the people from the top down, I think are very disconnected from the average football fan. There's a lot of elitism there and a lot of separation, because they know, regardless of the PR, no one's going to boycott the World Cup. No one's going to turn it off. The ratings aren't going to go down. They are insulated by the game's own success, which allows them to do a lot more of whatever they would like without fear of kind of reprisals. Because if this was, another sport, or if this was another private kind of thing, if this was a movie, for example, a lot of movies have gotten boycotted over the years, based on issues like this, for example, right? And that could kill a $100 million or $1 billion movie or whatever it is. It's like they're too successful to fail.
One thing as well they talk about with this World Cup is human rights. Human rights. Look, a lot of countries have their human rights violations and that. So, but if you're going to have a World Cup of human rights, then a lot of countries shouldn't be hosting a World Cup. I'm talking like Russia, for example. They've got human rights violations.
100%.
China held the Olympics as well.
But Adasi, this isn't the first argument that anyone's ever had about it, or the first discussion. When Russia was given the World Cup, a lot of people raised their eyebrows, including some of us. Maybe not Fatty. I don't know. I didn't know Fatty when they were given the World Cup. But I know, like me and Johnny did say, well, that was interesting. And when China were Beijing with the Olympics, it was the same issue.
Were you even talking about football 3 years ago?
I've stunned the Darcy into silence over here.
No. The point I was trying to make before you rudely interrupted me, to answer Johnny's question.
Before I interrupted, Darcy was talking. I interrupted the Darcy.
You interrupted me initially, but anyway, to answer Johnny's point directly, when he was talking about why is FIFA not doing anything about it? Thematic. It happened at almost every World Cup, everywhere it's held, with the exception of a few. For example, if you say Germany and whatnot, it's been happening constantly. No one ever brought it up. The only reason why it's been mentioned here, or it's the spotlight sort of cast on it, is because the World Cup itself is an anomaly. It's being played at a different time, whatever. So a lot of people are talking about it, but it's systematic. The bullshit that happens, the working conditions, the do it at all costs, make sure that the tournament's ready for the time that it's supposed to be ready, irrespective of what happens to people or the situation in that country. It's been going on at every World Cup. South Africa, same shit. South Africa 2010. They're telling me there weren't human rights violations, but no one's spoken about it.
So it's best not to shine the light on it and just keep quiet and not give any attention.
The tournament was ready in time. That's all that matters. The reason that people are talking about this is because it's a bit strange. Oh, playing in December. Why? Why Qatar? Oh, money. Oh, this. So people are nitpicking at things, but it's existed.
I don't think it's nitpicking. I think, like, it's not that I think you're wrong what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right. But I think it's also part of it. Like, you're right. The anomaly of it being in a different part of the year definitely brings more of a spotlight. I also think that people are much more aware of how corrupt FIFA has become in the last 2 years, because, back before we heard about Sepp Blatter and, all of the stuff that has happened with him and all the accusations that he has been charged against, and Michel Platini, like, while we were maybe, more or less in the know regarding corruption.
Don't say Platini, yeah, people get angry.
Well, that's exactly, I don't even know if he's still here.
He's frozen with rage.
So for me, the way I look at it is like, post that indictment of Sepp Blatter and the Frenchman that was in charge of UEFA for a time, Darcy. I think people have become much more aware and much less tolerant. Like I said, we were discussing it when Russia won the World Cup bid, and we were like quite surprised that they did. And then when Qatar was announced shortly after, we were, quite shocked at that.
Let me just say, everyone knew FIFA was corrupt before FIFA Gate. The corruption was evident always.
Yeah, it's not so much that people didn't know, Johnny, but when you have these massive indictments, it's, it really shone the light on it.
Well, according to you, it was a conspiracy theory until FIFA Gate happened, right?
No.
You talk about the World Cup being played in.
I just want to say quickly, Akram, twice now you mentioned Russia. It sounds like you've got a bone. You're the one who's got some fucking agenda against Putin for some reason.
Poor Putin.
But anyway, you keep mentioning Russia. I thought Russia was fine. There's no issues. I don't hear any bullshit.
It was a bit of an eyebrow raiser giving it to Russia in the first. Russia and Qatar, those two countries, especially because of who they were competing against to host the World Cup.
Because you probably don't think they're powerhouse nations when it comes to football. That's why. It was more of a political sense. I think I'll come from more of a political sense. Russia was in conflict with the US. There was a lot of... The US isn't a ruling authority on anything. Sorry.
It's not that, man. Come on. You're being belligerent and argumentative on purpose for no reason. The fact of the matter is, everyone was quite surprised when Russia got the World Cup.
Okay,
including yourself.
The same could be said about Brazil. The same could be said about South Africa. Oh, the first African country. Oh, randomly.
Everyone did have their eyebrows raised when South Africa won the World Cup. Maybe not to the extent that when Russia won it or Qatar.
Not really South Africa, because they were surprisingly knocked off for 2006. Germany won in 2006, and there was a big uproar about that. Then they said, okay, next one is in Africa. Then South Africa pretty much were the front runners in that. They were competing against Morocco, I think, for that bid, and then they got it.
That's a World Cup in Africa. That's why. That was the first one. I get it.
Yeah. Where else would you play if you was in Africa?
Morocco, I would.
What's wrong with you?
Sudan.
There's plenty of dirt pitches available.
Morocco. I'll put them in Morocco.
Look, I don't think South Africa was a surprising choice.
It's not about surprise. No one's suggesting surprise, but there was, like Fadi said himself, there was issues with the bid, and there were issues with the construction of the stadiums and the project in general. And everyone after that World Cup, and then the issues with Brazil. Then you lead on to Russia, which is an isolationist country. Then you move on to Qatar. Like, it was a sliding scale of getting more and more, I don't know. I don't want to use the word worse as it got on, but it's certainly more surprising that they were choosing countries that didn't exactly fit the most appropriate bid.
I think you've got an issue now with the fact that Qatar is going to play in the World Cup when generally they probably wouldn't qualify.
How did this turn around and you become an advocate for Qatar?
It is
I'm
the
not
first
an
World
advocate
Cup to play in.
I'm not an advocate. I'm against this fucking.
Yeah, so why? Yeah, exactly. Arguing with me about an opinion you agree with.
They're talking about now playing it in November next year, and they were actually initially going to play in the normal June, July months, and they promised that they were going to have air-conditioned stadiums. But
Yeah, I remember that.
if you have that, you cannot walk outside in the Middle East at that time of year. Like you cannot. It's like 40+ degrees. It's so hot and humid. Like, didn't they think that through? Like, honestly, let's change it. No, the weather's going to be too extreme. So,
All right. Apart from the weather, talk to me a little bit about Darcy about the culture in Qatar, because there's a lot of talks now. I think one of the princes had to come out and talk, or the CEO of the Qatar World Cup had to speak out about the LGBTQI community and how they'll be accepted or not accepted in Qatar. What's the culture like there? If I end up going, am I allowed to drink alcohol there? Is there alcohol allowed? What's the situation like? Do you know?
if you're going to go there when it comes to alcohol, they did say they were going to have alcohol served for fans. They're probably in the stadium or in and around stadiums. I think you just got to, for people living there, that's got to have a permit or a license to be able to drink alcohol there. But in terms of the country itself, they're based on Islamic law, and certain things are not allowed there. That things you find acceptable in the Western country, they're just not allowed there. And then that's the laws. So you've just got to respect that. So it's, you know.
But in saying that, to me, that makes him non-suitable to host a tournament.
But I'll add something to that point. So what Adas is saying is correct, 100%. But I'll give an example. For example, Saudi Arabia. When it comes to things like this, when it comes to international events that attract tourism and whatnot, Arabs are very, very self-conscious image-wise. They never want to look bad, especially to the Western world, especially when they're putting on an event or something like this. They're going to be, you're going to think that there's no difference with what they're allowed to do. Everyone's going to be allowed to do everything. They're not going to stop people doing anything because they're going to want it to look grand. They're going to want it to look great. They want to put on a show. They want to be the best World Cup, blah, 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 all that sort of shit. None of this stuff's going to apply. The drinking, all that sort of stuff's going to be fine. There's going to be a lot of concessions made. They're going to turn a blind eye to a lot of stuff to put on a good event. That's it. For the locals, it's going to be different. If you're a local, they're not going to accept it.
Yeah.
I think it's things like that, drinking and
they're not going to.
Things like drinking, same-sex, like homosexuality and things like that, it's banned there. But even like affection with heterosexual couples is not looked up upon in public. It's not. So
yeah, we understand that. That's like there are cultural differences and there are different laws, and every country you need to be able to respect the laws of the country you're in. However, it's also it's bad logic to suggest that I'm going to open myself up to an international market for one of the most international and diverse sporting events that there is, and at the same time not provide any kind of leeway or flexibility, because then what's the point there?
What do you want them to do? You want to change the laws?
No, not at all.
No. But if you're going to spend all these billions of dollars and you're going to spend all this effort and time in getting one of the most international and diverse sporting events in the world,
the biggest.
The biggest, Johnny. Sorry, man. Then the point is, do you really want it if you're not willing to sacrifice your laws or your cultural barriers? What's the point in getting it if you are going to increase isolation? And if you like for example, the people in charge of this World Cup, the princes and all their friends, if afterwards, let's say 5-10 years from now, they don't want to be looked at as having the worst World Cup in history, the World Cup where fans were rioting or angry, and you don't want it to be a travesty. So it's like a high risk, high reward. If you are going to open yourself up to an event like this, you need to consider those kind of issues, because up until now, we've never had a World Cup in the Middle East. So if you want a World Cup, what are you willing to sacrifice? And if you're not willing to sacrifice, fine.
They are going to sacrifice. I'm telling you what's
for Fatty saying it is.
But let me say this. Who are we to say you need to sacrifice your law or your culture? to me in itself, you don't have to, but to me that makes it a non-suitable location for a World Cup event.
No. Yeah. So what I'm not saying that anyone has to do anything.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's bad logic to go through this trouble, to spend the money, to go through the time, build it up, and at the same time then ruin the experience for fans, and then have the reputation of this World Cup be a negative one. Then afterwards, historically, it's for naught, because as we all know, things like the World Cup and the Olympic Games, these are milestone events for your country or for your region. They're not always the most profitable because of the amount of money it takes to build some of these things. And all the stadiums, the ones they built, a lot of the time countries have issues with filling them up and using it. So if it's not for profit or revenue, it's for prestige. But you're not going to get any prestige, Darcy, if everyone complains about it after the fact.
I reckon Qatar, they knew this. They should have had the foresight to know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Their laws and their culture is going to clash with what some parts of the world are going to feel about it. My issue with Qatar hosting the World Cup is around the fact that they circumvented around the certain rules for hosting a tournament, where one of them, for example, is that only one city can have two stadiums as a host country. It has to be spread out. But Qatar, they've got almost all the stadiums in Doha, in the capital. So things like that, and also playing it in winter. Okay, we're air-conditioned stadiums. Oh, but that's not going to be enough, because walking outside you can't in summer. Let's move it to November. And plus, also the culture of the people there in terms of football. My issue is that when you look at their local league, the crowd attendance are really bad. Really, but they'll only go to like a big name team that comes there, whether it's international or club level. So I'm concerned that maybe the locals aren't going to go to a lot of these games, which might not have a big team there, and you're going to have a lot of empty stadiums, and that's not going to be a good look. So that was my issue with.
I don't think empty stadiums in this day and age. I don't think empty stadiums will happen because of the travel. I know that people will miss out on tickets and stuff like that in previous World Cups. I feel like the stadiums are going to be filled not by locals but by traveling countries anyway. And being in Qatar, it's not the furthest away for Europeans to go to, for example. It's not you're going to have other Arabs in the area, I envision, going to Qatar for the World Cup, not just local Qatar people. Fatty, do you agree?
I don't think you're going to have any of those problems that you guys brought up. I'm calling it now. It's going to be one of the most prestigious World Cups, because these guys want to put on a show.
Yeah.
They're not going to get any of this bullshit get in the way. They're going to be the best World Cup that's ever been played. Stadiums are going to be full. Right? Even if they're not going to get people, if they know the stadium's not going to be full, they're going to pay people to go. I guarantee you. Because for these Arabs, like Akram said, it's all about prestige. 100%. Watch it be the best World Cup.
Yeah, they'll do whatever it takes. So because they want to walk out of the World Cup with a good reputation, they want everyone to sing their praises. Because otherwise, what's the point of having a World Cup? It's for the prestige and the milestone of it for your country and region.
And what you're saying, Fatty, what you're saying is that Arabs and ego are very closely linked.
Badly. Too much. But you're seeing a lot of former players as well getting on board. Like even our own Tim Cahill, he's I think living in Qatar now as working with FIFA with the tournament.
Hold on, stop. Getting on board and getting on your board of your bank account are two different stories.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that.
So getting on board because you believe in a cause is one thing. Getting on board because your bank account believes in it is a different thing.
It sounds like a Darcy's on board.
So I should have reworded that. So these guys have been influenced to come along. A lot of these former players, Cahill, Eto'o, a few others as well.
Well, Zidane was a consultant for the Qatar World Cup bid when it initially happened.
I think he was. Yeah.
So
these Arabs have they're like us. They have nostalgia with all these players. You know, the Ronaldinho, Brazilian players. But they have this. It's all about prestige for them. They would love to have a former player come on board. They'll throw stupid money at them. They have money to burn. Money's no object for these people. It's all about bringing these big players in, putting on a good tournament, looking great to the world. Look what we did. Look at the stadiums we built. That's it. That's all it's about. And now, watch, in coming years, coming bids, you're going to have other countries that want to compete. You're going to have the Emirates and other countries that, want to show themselves up as better than Qatar, or we can host a better tournament. That's what it's going to be. They're going to just trying to outdo each other constantly.
And it'll be the last one with 32 teams, by the way.
Is that confirmed?
Yeah, I think so. The next 2026 will be 48.
Rubbish.
And that's 100% confirmed?
Yeah,
officially or
99% sure.
99, not 100.
And is the Mexico, US, Canada
Yeah.
officially confirmed as well?
Yeah.
That's a nostalgic one. I like that. USA. Just reminds me of
Yeah.
'94.
Yeah.
Would be
Well,
nice.
to be fair, this Qatar World Cup win bid is probably one of the worst and best things that have happened to football, because thanks to Qatar winning this World Cup bid, he allowed for the Americans to get angry and investigate, and the English and the FIFA gate happened between 2010 and 2015. And it changed football a little bit in regards to, like I said before, things that we already knew, things that we knew were happening behind the scenes. It came to light with evidence. It came to light with people be found guilty, the investigations,
The
because
prison time.
because yes, you know they're guilty, but who's going to investigate them? Who's going to? They're the ones in charge, and then the law's not going to go chasing them because they weren't doing anything illegally in a sense of, is it worth their time? Is it worth? Who's going to get? Why would you investigate them? But this World Cup bid just highlighted what was happening behind closed doors, and FIFA Gate happened.
Did open a lot of issues around the bid, and and also it was a kind of like a lesson for Australia as well, because I remember their bid was quite shocking, to be honest. It was terrible compared to all the other countries' bids. So,
But that was the stupidity and naivety of Frank Lowy, thinking that people who gave him their word saying that, yeah, we're going to back your bid, ended up going for whoever paid him the most money. What a joke. And he fucking wasted $22 million or whatever the fuck it was on the bid. What a retard. That just showed how naive he was, and how naive we were as a footballing nation, thinking that, oh, all we need to do is, put on a good advertisement and showcase how beautiful Australia is, and, we've got the facilities and they're going to give it to us. It doesn't work like that. We were playing with the big boys and we fucking looked stupid. That's what it was.
pretty much.
And what's also come out is that not only did Qatar win the World Cup by corruption, let's call it that, Qatar did nothing different to previous bids. It's just because it was highlighted now, but it's later come out that Germany in 06 won it in a similar way, similar fashion. And from 98, France, 02, South Korea and Japan, Chuck Blazer, for example, who's the American representative, the CONCACAF, and there's a good documentary on Amazon Prime called the Fifa Family, and he goes into detail, especially about Blazer and the corruption. And it says after 98 World Cup, he took bribes for every hosting nation. That's
it would have surprised me. It would have surprised me. We've always known FIFA as an organization to be corrupt. End of. There's been no question about it.
Yeah, it's not just this World Cup. It's been other World Cups bid processes as well. So
I think as Johnny said, it just doesn't seem as shocking until you see some evidence, because ultimately it's just all hearsay.
Yeah, I think the most disappointing thing about the whole thing is, as Johnny called it, FIFA Gate. Afterwards, there's been a strong feeling that nothing's really changed. Just the people sitting in the same corrupt seats.
Yeah, it's just a change of personnel.
That's it.
Corruption. Okay,
but the machine just keeps going.
Yeah, Sepp Blatter's got fucking busted and got charged and got jailed and got his sentence extended.
When it was all brought to light, FIFA, and this also makes me laugh, FIFA brought in an independent person to investigate what was happening. Now, this person is from the FBI. He came and gave a big report on what he observed for 2 years and what he researched for 2 years. And then when FIFA got the report, we're like, whoa, we can't be showing this to anyone in public. So what they did was cut it down to their own version from the report, and that's what they publicized, but they didn't go public with the whole report because it was obviously going to make them look bad. That just talks about the culture of FIFA in what was happening back then. But these guys, we're talking about the 24 representatives of the executive committee of FIFA going around the world and being treated like royalty, meeting the Queen, meeting the princess, meeting the presidents, and getting the doors open by the Pope. And and that's the kind of people that we're dealing with. So what do you expect? People that haven't played football before, people that don't know the game apart from the business side of things. So this is, and like you said, Ak, what has changed? Infantino was under Sepp Blatter anyway. So
And
what's
this is the problem. It's because football is such a global game. There's a lot of interest in any country and all over the world, and at the highest levels. People are always going to be interested with the organising committee of the biggest sport in the world that draws the biggest crowd, that brings in so much money. There's always going to be some sort of prestige and royalty about it. So when a FIFA executive would go anywhere, you'd know that. For example, let's look at Euro 2020, even Euro representative, same thing. When we were going through the pandemic and the lockdown and all that sort of stuff in the UK, UEFA said to London, if you're not gonna give the committee members exemptions, then we're going to take the final from London. Well, what happened? All of a sudden, magically, they've all got exemptions. So
Capacity crowds too.
that's the kind of power they had, and that's at UEFA. That's a European level. So imagine at a worldwide level. You're talking about FIFA.
And forget bribes, just bribes, because let's look at France's bid, Platini's bid. So Platini promised the 2022 World Cup to America. Okay, so from what I'm hearing, and from what I saw in the documentary, and from what I've been reading, Platini said, "America, you got my bid." Now the French president stepped in, and France and Qatar were about to get into this deal with Qatar buying airplanes of France. They were both jet planes and fighter planes and passenger planes. It was a massive deal. So the president of France and the Qatari representative took Platini out for lunch, and then Platini ended up changing his vote to Qatar. Qatar won the World Cup, and a few weeks or months later, France, since the World Cup bid was won by Qatar, the France and Qatar connection grew by billions of dollars in business. That's another example of how someone can buy votes without using money directly. And FIFA is very big on political influence in football, and yet once again, when things like this happen, and there's evidence now, because before it was all hearsay, and the World Cups have gone past. But when things like this come to light, why is Qatar still allowed to have the World Cup?
It's too late.
But it wasn't too late back then. Like 5, 6, 7 years ago, when all these things came to light, it wasn't too late. Why Qatar, a country that wasn't ready to even host it because of resources and facilities, and all this come to light? If you want to show an example of you've changed and your organization has changed, why is Qatar still hosting the World Cup? That's my question.
There's too much money at stake, Johnny.
Arab influence as well.
So fear of Arab backlash.
There's a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of political games here. Now, don't forget, Qatar is one of the richest oil nations in the Gulf, the Middle East. So that's another political thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like what you're suggesting is that there's an Arab backlash or like some kind of fear of some kind of reprisal, but it's not just that. I think FIFA as an organizational body is fairly amoral. They're not really that interested in some of those kind of things. For them, it's the bottom line of, remember these executive committee members do get plenty of money, and their goal is to create more for them for their own individual wealth. So for me, I don't think they're really interested in that, in whether there is a moral dilemma. I don't think they're concerned about it from a PR perspective or a marketing perspective. Like I said, I think FIFA and football is too big to fail. So I think it's, and like we've said, we've seen people get being indicted, and we've seen people charged, and we've even seen people in prison, but the machine keeps going.
All right, it could be as well that beIN Sport, being one of the largest sports broadcasting companies as well, based in Qatar, paying maybe a huge deal for the TV rights there. Maybe that had an impact as well.
It all does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's all part of the game.
Yeah.
So what do you think the next step is for FIFA? Like, what is nothing going to change? Are we just going to...
Look, I mean, for me, there was nothing bigger than actually putting Sepp Blatter in jail. Like that was the biggest. That was the biggest media stunt, if you want to call it that.
100%.
And what has it achieved?
That's right. If anything was going to change, it would have changed from that.
Yeah, and it hasn't. So I don't think anything else has to do it. It just looks like they did something about it, you know. And now he comes out and says, "Oh, you know, look, we cleaned it up and whatever. We cleaned it up. You just throw him under the bus." That's it.
Did Platini get jail time as well? Do you know?
That question was for Darcy.
I think so. I don't know if it was a suspended sentence. I can't remember.
Because he got charged with taking bribes and kicking someone off a chat. There were the counts that he got done with.
Say.
So it's a big sentence coming up.
Yeah, the worst one of the lot.
2026, obviously going to America. 2030, who do you think should have it?
I think Australia's due. I think we're due, definitely. Now, you've given one to Africa, you've given one to the Middle East. We're going to go back to Europe again.
They're talking about London, England, aren't they?
No, I've heard South America. I heard Argentina, Colombia, and I think a couple other countries want to do a joint, like a 4-country bid.
They're talking about that because 2030 marks obviously 100 years since the World Cup started, and that was in Uruguay. So they're talking about, but they've been saying that for a while now, but nothing's been confirmed.
Those countries can't even feed themselves.
And that's the problem. The problem is that the resources, the facilities, are these countries prepared to host a tournament like this at the standard that it requires?
You're gonna have another Brazil 2014. Now, if you recall Brazil 2014 in the lead up to the World Cup, the months leading up to it, there were stadiums that weren't finished 3 months out.
Yeah.
And they were talking about what the fuck's going to happen. I recall watching that, and it was crazy. And people were saying these stadiums are not going to be done. They're not going to be ready for the open day.
And when they were done, the problem is after the World Cup, they're just sitting there with hardly any activity in them, and no tenants, hardly any tenants in them.
Because people can't even fucking eat. That's why. What are they going to do with a fucking stadium?
Same thing in South Africa. They built all these massive stadiums, but they're not being used since the World Cup finished.
They deserve those fucking vuvuzelas. They deserve everything they got.
No, I mean that's the thing. Is like I think Fatty is right that I think Australia is due. I think logically, I think we would be one of the best nations to host it. However, at the same time, I could see it still going to a South American or European team, despite maybe objections for their regarding their applications. But football, despite it being a global game, is predominantly still the most successful and popular in South America and Europe. And I don't think it's very very smart to go too long without having it arrive back in one of those two continents every few World Cups. Like I think as some kind of Rolodex, you might try a new region or a new continent here or there, but then you go back to your Europe and you go back to South America every so often.
Well, Russia zero, so.
Well, I reckon Spain and Portugal have got a joint bid in. That would be pretty good.
We're forgetting one thing, though. There's a lot of push for this World Cup every 2 years thing to go ahead.
Please don't.
And that's going to change a lot of things as well. Like Australia will definitely have one. Spain, Portugal will have one. England will have one. The more often you have it, obviously the chances that open up.
Then it loses the prestige.
I think honestly
we spoke about this as well, but it's something that they're pushing for a lot. And Infantino keeps talking about it every time. He was in South America recently, going to different countries, talking to the federations about this whole idea. His purpose of the trip was to push for the World Cup every 2 years. So I'll go back to Ax's point. It's all about the dollar at the end of the day. Like these guys care more about the money than everything else. He compared it to the Super Bowl, for example. So they just don't understand or don't care as long as the money comes in.
Yeah, I don't know. Every 2 years is a no-no for me. We've discussed that before on the show. But yeah, look, with FIFA, who knows what they're going to come up with? Even though if they don't know if they're so out of touch with the fans, with what.
That in itself is an indicator that this is all motivated by money, because no one's doing it because they just want to watch more football. Because even the players and a lot of people in the football community have come out and said, "You're going to lose its prestige. There's nothing to look forward to. It's going to look shit." But they're still pushing ahead with it. What does that tell you? Cleveland,
Yeah,
there's
48 teams in every 2 years. You're killing the World Cup.
come on, that's going to lose its value.
All right.
So I think it would be a disastrous idea. Like you guys have said, it would lose its prestige and lose its importance, and that's definitely true. But we've seen and talking about this, for the last half an hour, how much effort and money and time takes into preparing proper World Cup bids and being able to execute it correctly. I just think that they are honestly. It's a discussion of excess. Too much of a good thing. A World Cup every 2 years, you'll start to see World Cup, stadiums empty, and you'll start to hear about countries offering free tickets to locals or even paying them, like Fatty suggested. You'll start to see more human rights issues, more mess, more chaos. I honestly think that it would probably collapse upon itself. Honestly, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds bold. If they were to tomorrow suggest that, put it forward that they're going to an every 2 year window, I would reckon by 2040 they would go back to every 4 years. Because it's just too big to do every 2 years. It's like the Olympics.
But at the same time, tell me one person in this chat right now that would not watch the World Cup every 2 years.
You're right. From a TV rating perspective, the money would still be there, but logistically, being able to organize a World Cup for these nations, it would start to pile on. And for the players, for the clubs, the organizing of all that it's so massive. 48 teams. Like this is it's as big, if not bigger, than the Olympics in terms of from a logistics point of view. I honestly I'm struggling to imagine how that would go successfully and run successfully. Yeah, you're right. TV ratings, the money would still be there. But from every other standpoint, I think it would start to collapse on itself. And all it takes is big, incidents or tragedies or issues to just ruin the whole thing.
You'd also have a lot of objection from leagues in general.
Yeah.
You'd have the big European leagues are going to complain. They're going to say no. They're going to want to withhold players. There's going to be issues around it.
100%.
This Qatar might set a precedent. Imagine other countries saying, "Oh, we want to play at this time." Whoever wins the bid says, "Oh, we want to play," from April. Someone says, "Oh, we want to start in October," like whatever, some bullshit.
You're right. Yeah.
You're setting a precedent now. It's going to get too messy.
Yeah. It's going to collapse in of itself. And, we know when you stretch resources too far, when you put too much time limits, things get missed. All it takes is another, disaster of a riot, of a stadium collapse, or another issue. When you do things this kind of quick and hot shot, World Cup bids, these are not things to mess around with. You need years of preparation. Every 2 years, it would get ridiculous on itself. And so I honestly think that if they do it, and like Fatty said, the clubs, the leagues, there'll be a lot of objection, even at first. Even if they said, "Look, too bad, this is what we're doing at first," and everyone whinges and cries about it. It's one thing when you hear about it; it's another thing living it. After a couple of World Cups, a lot of leagues, UEFA, everyone would be, "Look, we've tried it; it's really not working."
It's also, from a fan's point of view, when you lose, when you get knocked out, the pain is bigger because it's 4 years. I feel like if it's 2 years, we're back in a couple of years, we'll try it again. But 4 years is like, fuck, we just lost. We're just gone up there. It's another 4 years to wait. We've been waiting for so long. And on the flip side, when you win a game, when you go through the next round, it becomes bigger. It magnifies the win the same way it magnifies the loss, because of how important this tournament is, and it happens every 4 years. So some of that will be lost as well, because you have players and fans thinking, "Fuck, in a couple of years' time, we'll come back stronger." So you lose a bit of that. That what makes it special, in my opinion.
Definitely.
By that logic, Johnny, then you're diminishing the Argentina's Copa America win. If I can host,
I don't know when the next one is, but
what do you mean? But it's every year. What's wrong with you?
Until Messi wins one, which he did now.
it's over now. It's over.
It's going to be every 6 years.
It's over. So are they not having aircon stadiums anymore, Darcy?
I don't know about that, but
I don't
like when
think
you're
so.
playing in November, it's fine. The weather's actually pretty good in November, December in that part of the world. But
Yeah,
June,
it's-
July, it's just not going to work. You cannot walk outside in that time of year. You
Is
can't.
anyone thinking of going?
I don't know. My brother who's in Dubai keeps telling me to come over there and visit. So if I go there, I'm gonna might as well just go to Qatar, watch a few games, maybe. I don't know. See how it
You're
goes.
around the corner, mate. You're an hour away on a flight.
Yeah.
Fadiak?
No, I don't want to be one of those people that supports human rights violations like that.
Okay,
I
cool.
mean, Akram
Fatty.
doesn't watch international tournaments at the best of times from the comfort of his own lounge. He's not going
He'll
to travel.
be watching Netflix.
Would you go, Fatty?
I would purely because it's the World Cup. Nothing more, nothing less.
I think I'll definitely go to the America one in 2026.
That would be a great one to go to, but again, who knows what
What
happens?
about
Yeah,
2030? If it's in Argentina, Johnny's definitely gone back.
I'll swim there. I'll swim there. No, I'll definitely be going there if it's in 2030. Hopefully.
Nice.
We didn't even get to speak about the football side of things. Now I don't mind. I like this conversation. It needed to happen. We needed to highlight because the FIFA once said the FIFA corruption has been happening not only in the last 10, 15 years because it's been highlighted, but for as long as I remember Maradona coming out in the early 90s, late 80s against FIFA corruption, especially in the early 90s, and speaking against them. And he was one of the only, if not the only player to do it publicly. And just shows that it's been happening for a long time. With
I don't think it's only a FIFA thing, but when there are big organizations that are in charge of such a big, powerful movement, there's always going to be some sort of systematic corruption. And look across the board at any. Let's stick to football, for example. Any footballing hierarchy or organization in any country in the world, there is some corruption, whether it be an international body like FIFA, the European body like UEFA, the South American body, the African, body. Even if you look at individual countries, for example, why we need to go too far, look at the FFA itself. Not corruption in the sense that there's so much money that they're doing, but in terms of
power
and making decisions that would influence certain things, and a lot of politics involved. So it's the way of the world, unfortunately. But it's a shame because it's at the root of it, football is a sport that's such a simple thing that brings people together to enjoy, the finer things about the game. But when there's too many tiers of hierarchy, which is what we're seeing, it's always going to be. And unfortunately, I don't think we can escape it. There's no way around it.
Any last comments on the topic before one last request from me?
Last request.
Okay, my request is to you, Fatty.
Here we go. Why is it always to me?
Because listen. I had a bad weekend on the multis. Every multi I had started off with something positive towards Chelsea. The first game I fucking watched, Chelsea lost. Every multi I had, I lost. So my request is for next week onwards, Fatty's hot tips to come back.
It's fine. I can adhere to that request. No problem.
All right. On the note of Fatty making us rich, if we win a few multis, we're going to Qatar, all of us.
Corruption.
On that note, thanks guys. Thanks for a good chat. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.